Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you my review of the new Fujinon 16 to 80 millimeter. This is a constant f4 aperture, and it is their R, meaning it has an aperture ring. It is OIS, meaning it has an optical image stabilizer, and beyond that, it also is WR, which means it is weather resistant or has weather sealing. So this becomes the new, perhaps most desirable general purpose lens on the Fuji platform. Previously, Fuji shooters have had the bifurcated choice between the 18 to 55 millimeter, f2.8 to 4, so a little less feature rich, not weather sealed, but it did have the optical image stabilizer. And then on the premium end of things, there is the 16 to 55 millimeter f2.8 that does not have optical image stabilization, but has the faster maximum aperture of f2.8 along with being weather sealed with a little bit more of a premium build and design. And so now you have an option that kind of splits the difference between the two, giving you both the premium build, weather sealing, linear motor focus, but also giving you the optical image stabilization. And in this case, a really impressive 6-stop rated optical image stabilizer, which is among the very best that I've seen under any conditions. And it works in real life. I was able to get really low shutter speeds hand-holding with a static subject that's not moving. Remember that no optical image stabilizer is going to stop the movement of your subject, and so that's something to watch out for. But it works really well. It's smart and senses, and so you don't have to worry about turning it off or on. It will automatically sense, and so it reacts kind of intelligently to the situation that it's in. It's a very impressive implementation of that. Now I'm going to be giving you more highlights today, a briefer format review. If you want all the nitty-gritty and to dive deep into the details, check out the definitive review here, and it will help to fill you in on all of the details and whether or not this is a lens that you should consider. So as I've noted, this does have number one, a focal length that is obviously the biggest zoom range of any of these standard zoom options. It goes all the way from 24 millimeters of a full frame equivalent on the wide end, and then all the way to 120 millimeter equivalent in full frame on the telephoto end. And so obviously, as you can see from these photos, that gives you a really nice broad range of framing options in any kind of situation for either photos or video. Very useful. It also, as noted, has a maximum aperture of f4. So it kind of falls into that, fills the role that for full frame shooters, they will often look at a 24 to 105 millimeter f4 lens. So this gives you that kind of, but with that little extra bit of extra 15 millimeters of zoom range as a part of it. And so I think that it will become an attractive lens for a lot of shooters for that reason. And so it has Fuji's kind of standard hybrid approach to aperture selection, and so you have the option of either using the manual aperture ring and 1/3 stop to tense, or you can set it to A for automatic and either let the camera control aperture or control it from within the camera itself. Beyond that, it also has a nice smooth zoom ring and then a nice smooth zoom action. There's no wobble here. Everything is nicely engineered. It is a focus by wire, as all of these Fuji lenses, and you can determine whether or not you will have a linear or non-linear action within the camera body itself. As noted, it is weather sealed, and that starts with a gasket at the lens mount with 10 seal points throughout. And so what you've got here is a very nicely made and reasonably compact zoom lens, and so it kind of falls nicely in between the size and weight of the 18 to 55 and the 16 to 55 millimeter f2.8, and is the moderately sized one of the two. But it's sized in such a way that it is a nice balance here on the Fuji X-T3 that I've done the review on. It has a 72 millimeter front filter thread, and it has 9 rounded aperture blades, and so the aperture has a couple of more blades than the 18 to 55 that has a 7-bladed aperture. Advantage of that being that in some situations, as you stop down, the aperture will stay a little bit rounder, and so your bokeh circles will stay a little bit rounder, a desirable quality. It also has a fairly decent sunburst effect when stopped down, and so as you can see from this photo here. Now, it employs Fuji's linear motor focus system, and what that means is that focus is extremely quiet. It's also extremely fast. In most focus situations, you are not even going to hardly notice focus taking place in terms of the process. Neither will you hear it. You'll just pretty much instantaneously move from one focus subject to another. The only time you would probably ever see that process at all is if you were making a major focus change from minimum focus to infinity. Even so, that still happens quickly. As we can also see from this test here, focus is incredibly quiet. You will not hear focus taking place at all, and focus pulls for video are fairly smooth as well. Another advantage that you're going to find is that incredible optical image stabilization that it has, the OIS. And that 6 stops has allowed me to repeatedly get shots, at say 1/3 of a second handheld and getting consistently sharp results without any kind of camera shake associated. And so I'm very impressed by that. And for video purposes, it does make a difference. The image stabilization is obviously incredibly useful here. It's not, a replacement for a gimbal, but you can see that you are able to handhold pretty effectively, particularly at wider focal lengths. You'll see a little bit more movement even with stability at the telephoto end. Footage off of the lens and through Fuji's excellent 4K looks really good, nice and crisp, good detail, certainly a useful video lens. My only real complaint when it comes to the autofocus is that I found that IAF sometimes didn't always deliver accurately focused results. It mostly did, as you could see from these portraits, but periodically there would be a complete miss. And so that could be as much to do, probably more so to do with the camera body at this point, but that is an area where Fuji still needs to refine the process compared to some of their chief competitors. And so I think it's something they should continue to work on. By and large, however, I had good focus results, and I really like the quality of focus compared to some other Fuji lenses that I have reviewed. Now, when it comes to the image quality, obviously there are going to be some compromises involved with such a big zoom ratio. And where those compromises mostly bear out is on the telephoto end. The lens is fairly consistently sharp throughout a lot of that zoom range, but at 80 millimeters, it is somewhat noticeably softer, has less contrast, and even stop down, it doesn't sharpen up particularly well, particularly in the corners of the frame. If you're composing with a subject near the center of the frame and stop down a bit, the results are pretty good, but never do the corners get incredibly sharp. Beyond that, however, and one thing I should note is that Fuji has basically designed these lenses both with optical and software correction in mind. And so it's basically impossible to defeat the lens corrections. They're just part of the workflow. And so as a byproduct of that, however, your end result of what you're going to see has no discernible vignette and no real discernible distortion. And so it does a good job with that. I would say a bit better job than what I saw than with the 16 to 55 millimeter that does show a little bit of distortion in some situations even after those corrections. And so they've done a great job with that. Some things that stood out to me is good contrast, and particularly when stopped down. Good control of chromatic aberrations, again, either optically or via software, but at least some of that has to be optical because there is also correction there for longitudinal chromatic aberrations, which are not really an issue. I also thought that the color rendition from the lens was very nice, from everything from skin tones to shooting landscape type scenes. And so overall, aside from that little bit of a misstep at 80 millimeters, I was impressed with what I saw. I also felt like flare resistance was pretty good for a zoom lens like this. Again, there's always compromises to be made, but I felt like that the flare resistance was pretty good, not only on the wider end of the zoom range, but also fairly good at the telephoto end, and that was both wide open and stop down. It's not flawless, but there's no real defect there that's going to ruin images. So kudos to Fuji with doing a good job with their coatings on that. So at the end of the day, at a price point of $799 at the MSRP in the United States, I think this is a lens that will be very appealing it might become to me, it's a better option, a superior option to the 18 to 55 millimeter. Now, as far as MSRP goes, it's only $100 more. Though to be fair, most people have not paid the full MSRP for the 18 to 55. Often when bundled in with a camera, you're not paying anywhere near the $699, price tag of the lens. At the same time, however, I think that for a lot of people, they're going to like what this lens offers in terms of the expanded zoom range, better autofocus, better image stabilization, and I believe over a lot of the zoom range, it actually has better image quality as well. It certainly is the lens that I would choose over that. If I had the money, however, I might still be tempted to go with the 16 to 55 millimeter, particularly if it involved portrait shooting. I still think that that is the better lens for portraits and delivers a little bit better image quality, particularly at the kind of aperture values that I prefer to shoot at in many situations. However, this lens provides a great compromise between the two, and I think should definitely be on your short list if you're looking for a standard zoom for your Fuji camera. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you look in the description down below, there is linkage to the full text review, also to an image gallery if you want to look at more photos. Beyond that, there is also buying links if you want to purchase one for yourself, and linkage to follow me on social media or to become a patron, to sign up for my newsletter. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.